Hello and welcome to A Cup of Conversation on BRT2 TV. My name is Jan Ghazi, and this week in the studio I'm very honoured and delighted to have a lovely lady. Her name is Kathy Martin, and she has been living here in North Cyprus for many years, and she's been a regular fan and supporter of Bayrak Radio TV, especially our radio station, Bayrak International. And Kathy is here to tell her story. Now, she actually moved here years ago with her husband, Alistair, who unfortunately passed away back in November last year. And you know what, I'm not going to say too much because the story is going to unfold as we speak, but it might get a bit emotional every now and then, so please do bear with us and bear our emotions and our tears every now and then. But I'm very honoured, as I said, to have the lovely Kathy Martin here in the studios of Bayrak. First of all, Kathy, welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for inviting me.
You're more than welcome. It's a pleasure to see you here. And it takes me back to the very first time you came to visit us here at Bayrak a few years ago when you came down with Alistair, your late husband. And I remember it was quite exciting to, you were always chatting with us either via phone or via Facebook. And then you decided one day you were in Lefkoshia and we decided to invite you to come down. And I remember meeting you for the first time. And your excitement and your warmth and your compassion. And I want to say thank you now for all that you've done for us, all the support you've given Bayrak over the years.
Oh, we basically, when we arrived on the island, May 2006, we had our radio and we fiddled and we came across an English-speaking voice. Oh, we thought. And that must have been, I don't know, the 8th of May, 9th of May 2006. And we've been firm fans ever since.
Amazing. Nearly 10 years down the line. Now we're going to talk about, your life with your husband Alistair, and of course a new year and a new beginning for you, because despite all the emotional disrupt that you've had in your life since the passing of Alistair, you've actually been very, very positive, which I've been very, very happy to follow on Facebook. Thank God for social media, knowing that you're coping very well. But we'll tell our viewers more about what's coming up in your life this year a little bit later in the programme. But let's go back now. You are originally from the UK. What part of the UK were you from?
Well, I was born in Winchester, but at the age of 6 weeks, my mother took me out to what was then called the Gold Coast, which is now called Ghana, because my father was based in Takoradi, which is up country from Accra. Then I stayed there. My mother had another baby back in the UK in Winchester in 1954, and so obviously I went with her. Then we moved back to Ghana. That was then called Ghana, I think, by then. Then my father was transferred to Kenya. So I lived in Kenya until I was 8. And then my father was transferred back to Ghana. And it was decided that the schooling there was not really suitable for us. So my sister, I was just before my 9th birthday, and my sister was 18 months younger than me. And we went to boarding school in Hastings, which, looking back, I don't know how my parents did it. There was no way I could have put my daughter into a boarding school. I just found it was an emotional time. My younger sister and brother, who've both been born in Nairobi, they were able to be schooled in Ghana because they were suitable schools. Then, as they got older, they got sent to the UK boarding schools. So we were backwards and forwards. We used to spend the Christmas holiday and the Easter holiday in Ghana. And the summer holiday, my father had what was called home leave, and he would come. And by that time, they'd bought a house in St Leonard's near Hastings. So we would live in Hastings in fact, just as an aside, the Mods and Rockers had a wonderful battle in Hastings in 1966, I think it was. And it took place outside our house. And I can remember at the age of I must have been 10, 11, looking out at these Mods and Rockers having a battle just outside our house. Very, very exciting it was. Anyway, then my father was transferred back to East Africa, Uganda at that time, Kampala. So again, we were still boarding school in England, backwards and forwards. I decided to backtrack a tad, when we'd left Nairobi, we went on the Rhodesia Castle, round the coast, and I must have been 7, 8. And I thought, oh, I want to be a nanny. I want to be a children's nanny on a boat and look after children. What a wonderful life. So that was it. My mother said, no, become a teacher, much better. And I said, no, I'm going to be a children's nanny. I'm going to have a job on a ship. And the shocking thing was, as I got older, I found out you had to be 25 before you were allowed to go onto the ship. So I thought, oh, that's a bit old. So anyway, I then trained in Tunbridge Wells for 2 years as a children's nanny. And that convinced me that the UK was not somewhere I ever wanted to spend my life. It was cold, it was miserable. I hated the winters, absolutely loathed them. So when I left college at the age of, 20, I went and stayed with some friends from Uganda in Holland, who their son had gone to Bulawayo in Rhodesia. So I thought, that sounds fun. So at the age of 21 and about 2 months, I emigrated on my own to Bulawayo. My father and mother were very supportive, thought I was completely bonkers, but they said, well, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you're going to do. Yeah. So I ended up in Rhodesia. They had what they called an assisted passage. So they repaid me my airfare, which in those days was £250. And there I was in Bulawayo with £250, a qualified nursery nurse, which is like taking coals to Newcastle, because everybody employs African nannies. They do not want to employ an NEB trained at an exorbitant salary. So I'm thinking, oh dear, now what do I do? So I was with the British High Commissioner, I went into them, and while I was sitting there in his office, the phone rang, and excuse me, he said, and he had a quick chat, and he said, hang on a second. He turned to me and said, how do you fancy being an Avis girl? I said, fine. So I got a job as an Avis girl at Bulawayo Airport. And I started there in the August 1974. Alistair was in the UK on leave, and I can remember the security woman, Laura, coming up and introducing herself, and she said, just the man for you. He's not here at the moment, he's in the UK on leave. When he comes back, I'll make sure I introduce you. So she did, she introduced him. We were airport colleagues. We were, it was okay. Yeah. But nothing, there was no flash of thunder or,
no
sparks.
First sight,
no. But he went to his sister's wedding in Salisbury in July, came back, and friends who know Alistair know that he did like a drink now and then, and he was definitely had enjoyed his drink at the wedding. Came up to my Avis desk and tried speaking to me. I said, how are you getting home? He said, on the airport bus. I said, don't be silly. We Avis girls, we were allowed a car. So I said, no, I'll take you home. So I drove him back to his flat, with great difficulty, helped push him up the stairs into his flat, made some black coffee, had a chat, and then I had a very amusing incident. I can honestly say this was purely platonic. I tried to get him into bed, and as I put his feet down, his head came up, and as I put his head down, his feet came up, and in the end I said, oh, blow that, I'm leaving you to it. And in the course of the conversation, he had said to me, I must take you out for a meal sometime to say thank you. So I'd agreed just to be nice. The next time we were working together at the airport, he came up to me and he said, did I or did I not ask you out for a meal the other night? So I said, well, you did, but please don't feel. He said, no, I'd like to say thank you because it was very kind of you taking me. And so almost reluctantly, I said yes, okay, and we went out. We had the most fantastic evening. We clicked, and within a month, we were engaged to be married.
Amazing. What a lovely story.
I just couldn't imagine not being with this man. Having been just airport colleagues, suddenly I thought, And because he got transferred to Salisbury from Bulawayo. And he said, we were driving back, again, I was driving back, and he told me about it. And I said, oh, that's a shame. And he said, yes, because I think I could spend the rest of my life with you. So I said, yeah. I said, well, ask me nicely then. So he said, okay, will you marry me? So I said, yes.
What a lovely story. What a nice way to begin. You know, even though it might not have been love at first sight, it certainly was love for 41 years?
41 years, yes.
Until November
Well, we were
last year.
married 27th of March 1976 because his mother worked for the tax office, and she said, don't get married before the end of March because you get, end of the year, you get a full tax rebate. So we got married the last Saturday in March that year, and we got Alistair got tax rebate as if he'd been married the whole year. I don't know how it worked. I have no idea. I didn't know. But it paid for our honeymoon. So we then got discounted tickets through TAP, and we went back to the UK, where my parents met their new son-in-law for the first time. Luckily they seemed to get on all right. And we had because I was with Avis, we hired a car through Avis, and we drove around the UK, visited all various relations. Another sweet little story. When Alice was telling me where he was born in a little village called Romiley near Manchester, Stockport. And he's telling me this story, and he said, you won't have heard of it, little village called Romiley. I said, well, funny you should say that. My godmother lived in Romiley. And when we were on honeymoon, we went and we actually visited the house that he used to live in, called Hilltop. And in fact, anyone who's reading the Cyprus Scene will see a photograph coming up when it gets published. Yeah. We took a photograph of him standing on the steps. And my godmother lived down the hill and round the corner. Well, there we are, 6,000 miles away in Rhodesia.
Yeah.
And my godmother lived round the corner from where he lived. We have found that quite bizarre.
That's a charming little story. So, happy life together, 41 years. What brought you to North Cyprus then, back in, 10 years ago nearly?
Well, we came first in 1975, March, because David Oliver, who was a friend of ours in Rhodesia, back in Rhodesia, had come here himself 2 or 3 years before that, and we were still in touch, still friends, and he said, oh, you've got to come and see this beautiful country. You will just fall in love with it. So we came and spent a week's holiday with him. We hired a car, and we drove and did, the Carpaz and Salamis and everything. And we got back, and I can always remember Dave and Clive saying to us, they knew the moment we got back that was it. We were hooked.
You were hooked.
Mm. And we went back to the UK, and they came and visited us in the August, and chatting a bit more. And when they left, I turned to Alistair and I said, so when can we go? We both hated our jobs. Alistair was working for the Child Support Agency, a very, very stressful job. I was working for the NHS by that stage. Again, a very stressful. We both had time off with depression, which is why I'm very sympathetic of anybody who suffers from depression. And people who turn around and say, oh, snap out of it. It's an illness, you cannot snap out of it. Yeah. Anyway, we came here again in the October of 2005. We opened a bank account, we were going to take over the lease of the cottage. They met their landlord, got everything sorted out, put £1,000 in a bank account at a fantastic rate of exchange, or whatever it was in those days, 20-something%, which for 6 or 7 months sat there accumulating all this extra money. So by the time we came out, we had a nice chunk of money sitting here. And we went back to the UK. Hastings, in the meantime, had been twinned with Brighton. So our house that we had paid about £70,000 for doubled to about £140,000. So we thought, right, that's it, on the market, sold it, paid the mortgage off.
And came here.
And
you've been living in Duanco ever since?
Not quite. We bought basically, we met up with Injali Fell,
Yeah.
And she helped us get our first residency sorted out. And she knew we couldn't afford a villa. We weren't after a big place. All we wanted was a one-bedroom flat. And she said, well, there's some flats being built in Doankoi, which is the village I live in. So she said, I'll sort it out for you. And through that, we bought off plan. And we were extremely lucky. All the people who've had nightmares with builders and things here, we were told our flat would be ready in September 2008. And I can't remember which travel agency it was, had a special offer. If you flew and returned by June 2008, you got a special one. So we did that. And we already had the holiday booked when the builder said to us, well, you can move in anytime. They'll be ready June, July. So we said, oh, okay. So we actually moved in on the 25th of July, which was about 2 months before our contract said. So we were actually in the Cyprus a day, I can't remember how many years ago now, because we were so depressed, I suppose, reading all these sad stories about everybody's bad luck with builders.
Yeah.
And there were two other couples as well, and I saw it at the same time, put the positive side.
Yeah. Actually, you went into your home ahead of time, not later than time.
Yeah.
And actually we had a nice ending, you got what you wanted.
Absolutely, yes.
Fantastic. So in a way, I mean, I have to say this, that, in the years that I've known you and Alistair, and we've met a few times, and, obviously with our contact via the radio, you've always been, touch wood, positive.
Oh, yes.
A positive couple. I've never actually, obviously we all have our good days and bad days and ups and downs. I mean, that's a normal part of our everyday life. But, you've always actually dealt with anything in a positive manner, haven't you?
Well, I think we've both always been half glass full people rather than half glass empty. Although I did see a very amusing thing on Facebook the other day, who drank the top half.
Yeah.
Oh, I never thought of that. But no, we have always looked on. In fact, a friend of ours here accused us once, why are you two always so positive about everything? We said, well, we'd rather be positive than negative. Always. And another very interesting thing that I feel very strongly about is the mirror will reflect what it sees. Mm-hmm. So if you are nice and kind and generous and try and speak Turkish, for example, you get the positive feedback. Mm-hmm. And I hate it when I'm somewhere where I hear an expat being rude and derogatory to a Turkish. There was one time, I'm not going to mention the shop or but why don't they speak English, she said to her husband. And when she and her husband had left the shop, I apologised to the shop. I said, I'm so sorry, we're not all like that. Because Alice and I were horrified the way this woman was speaking. So
I have to say that you have very much adapted into the Cypriot life. I mean, I know that as you say about Turkish, you make the effort to say a few words in Turkish, and I know that you are very, very positive about the island. To be honest, I'm amazed because I mean, for those who don't know the story, obviously. One of the reasons why we're here is to talk about your late husband Alistair, because he did pass away. He wasn't very well, and again, I learned via Facebook when shocking news. I mean, I heard about him going into hospital and not being well and coming in and out, and you were actually updating everyone. But when I heard, it was very sad. But I actually thought to myself, I wonder what happens now to Kathy, because you have a daughter, son-in-law, and
Wales,
a grandson in the UK. I thought, well, maybe another person would then pack up and go back and be with their family there. But actually, ironically, again on Facebook, you actually wrote, you were debating with somebody, I can't remember now what the topic was, but I actually remember reading your banter on Facebook with somebody else saying, Alistair and I will die here. Mm-hmm. And quite ironically, it wasn't long after that he did pass away, but you actually believe that.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
you have no intentions of leaving North Cyprus, going to the UK. You're quite happy still living here in North Cyprus.
I have paid for a double grave.
In the cemetery.
He's down there, and I'll go in on top eventually. I hope it's many, many years yet.
I hope so too.
But, yeah.
But yes, so that actually is quite unusual, I think, because you know it could have been any time that you could have said, well, you know, I don't want to be here by myself now. You know, you could have even buried Alistair back in the UK, where you know you could have gone back and be with your family, with your child, and you know, with Sasha and your grandson. But no, you chose this. When you reflect now on the nearly 10 years that you had together with Alistair here, have you really had no regrets? Are you really loving
Absolutely.
being here?
No, I think, as David and Clive said to us, it's very like Rhodesia. As long as you accept the Cyprus time and the manana, it will happen. And if somebody makes an appointment, they say they're coming at 10 o'clock on Thursday, and you don't say, what, this Thursday, you say which year, you know. And as long as you accept that,
Yeah.
and we never got ourselves our knickers in a twist, to use that expression, because we were used to it. In Africa, the African was so much the same. They would say to you, I'm coming round, madam, at 9 o'clock to sort something out, and you'd be lucky if you saw them by 2 o'clock. So,
Yeah, so
you know,
a similar sort of
very similar.
atmosphere,
Yeah,
you know,
and it
same
didn't-
sort of culture.
Same, yes, exactly. And it's never, ever worried us. We've just, Alice's favourite expression, he would say, oh, Cyprus time. Or, hey, this is Cyprus. That was another physics. Oh, hey, this is Cyprus.
In fact, I mean, he was a very witty man, and I know this is how we actually met socially. That we were all writing for, well, Alistair and I were writing for the KibCom Times
Yes.
and the KibCom Forum, as it later became, or, you know, the newspaper folded and we wrote on the forum. He had his random ramblings, didn't he?
Yes, when, I can't remember how it came about, but Marion Stewart contacted Alistair because he was also very fond of writing letters to the Cyprus Today. And Marion contacted him and said, Sonra and I were wondering whether you'd be interested. So we met up with Marion, and Alistair was a very shy and retiring. He did not want anybody to know that he did it. So between the two of them, they came up with the name Random Rambler. And he was very happy to be the Random Rambler as long as he didn't mind close friends knowing. I mean, I know, for example, Carol Lloyd knew that he was a Random Rambler. But apart from, you know,
It was quite anonymous, wasn't it? Very. If you didn't know, you didn't know that it was Alistair.
No. And he enjoyed, I think also he enjoyed because he felt he had the freedom to say whatever he wanted then. If he wanted to criticise the government or whatever, nobody was going to turn around and say, that's you.
Yeah.
We're going to throw you out the island because we don't like what you said. Or whatever. But he just, and he loved it. He really enjoyed it.
Anonymity was quite, you know, gave you a bit of freedom of speech in a way. What were the random ramblings? For those who didn't actually get the chance to read them,
basically,
what were they about?
He would, on a Monday, he would say to me, and it was quite regular, he would say, oh, what am I going to ramble about this week? And it was stock phrase. I said, oh, don't worry, darling, I'm sure you'll find something. And something in the news would catch his eye, or he'd be listening to Radio Barak's 2 o'clock newses, you know, that sort of, or Fatosh's programme in the morning, and something would, and he'd say, oh, that's it. I mean, for example, the motorcyclists not wearing their helmets.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And he would then write something about it.
And share his views.
Yes.
And I know that, you know, he was very sort of like, you know, a popular guy in the paper. I mean, it was a shame that the paper didn't continue in that respect because, you know, he had quite a few followers and quite a lot of people contributed to that. But ironically now, and this is one of the reasons why I invited you in today, okay, so we do follow. I know that you're very popular on Facebook and that you do share a lot. And I mean, I love Facebook as well. I mean, for me, it's a lifeline. I use it for my job, as you know, Kathy. You know, especially for my Friday programs, Take 5, when I get my requests from you guys.
Yes.
And you know, you and Alistair were always choosing songs. And of course, you were regular listeners of Mike's program, who.
Well, in fact, I believe we were his first people to contact him.
I think you were, yes. 7, 8 years ago now. 8 years ago.
Whenever it was he started, we heard his first show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, that's how you became friends.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you live in the same village,
Yeah.
or he's in yours, uncle.
He's in Ozencourt, yes.
He's just
yes,
down the
yeah.
road from you. But
Yeah.
you know, I know that you're regular listeners and very supportive. And you know, I noticed that really where Alistair is finished, you sort of like taken over literally, because now I know that you've shared a few things, or you'll be sharing on Cyprus Scene.
Yes.
You've met with Chris Elliott and Margaret Sheard, haven't
Yes,
you? Tell us
I
something
have.
about that.
Well, basically, Alice, the weekend after I got back after the funeral, the 8th, 9th November, I was looking at on my home computer, and I came across something called My Life and Times. And I remember that 3 or 4 years ago, Alice had been doing something, and he said, oh, I'm doing my life story, but don't worry about reading it now. And so I'd never read it. So I sat there, and the tears were streaming down my face as I read his life story.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I can't be the only one to read this. I want other people to see it. So I emailed it to a few friends. I emailed it to relations. And the feedback I was getting back was, oh, this is, you've got to let people know this. This is really interesting.
Were there things that you didn't know about him in there?
Without spoiling Cyprus Scene,
Yeah.
but the first 3 episodes are about his life. The last bit is the war stories. When we were in Rhodesia, there was the Rhodesian War, the blacks against the whites, if you want to put it very bluntly.
Mm-hmm.
And Alistair got called up and was in the Rhodesian. There's a photograph of him, and he looks like he's a mercenary, and that's basically what they were. He carried an MAG, and he had some horrific stories. And when I read those, the tears that were flowing before became a waterfall, because I knew that he'd been through hell, but he'd never talked about it. He had never told me. And some of the camps that he came out, there was one, I was telling you briefly before we started this program, he was the only survivor out of a truck of I can't remember how many people, but they went over a landmine, then they were attacked and people were shooting at them, and the one chap was wounded and Alistair was very lucky and didn't get wounded, but everybody else died. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah.
All I knew was that I was working in Victoria Falls, and I phoned the airport in Bulawayo and I said, any sign of Alistair yet? Because he flew back from Bulawayo. And they said no. And then they phoned me the next day and he said, he's on the flight, Kathy. Be prepared. He's not looking too good. So it was only about an hour's flight. I had the longest hour of my life. And he came off the plane and he was wearing the clothes he'd been in the bush in, because he had nothing else. Everything else had been burnt. And I was getting a bit emotional.
Take a deep breath. This is why it's so important to share these with other people, to share memories of your loved ones. And amazingly, he's actually written these down for you to discover after he passed away.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and let's move on from some of the rest of the story has to be read on Cyprus Scene. Yes?
Yes,
Right.
brilliant, well done,
I
yes.
think you've given away too much there, so the rest, we don't want to spoil Chris and Margaret's
that's true.
exclusive.
No.
But I mean, isn't it amazing though, Kathy, that when you think about what he was doing when he writing his ramblings,
Yeah.
and you know being part of life here in the community, and now you've actually turned you know a difficult time, obviously a very difficult time for you, you know, losing Alistair, into a positive thing now, and it's still continuing. You know, you're learning, maybe it's part of your grieving process for Alistair, but sharing now with the public. So this will be a series in the Cyprus Scene website, which, you know, if you go onto cyprusscene.com, I'm sure you will see the photographs accompanying the literature. But, you know, for you, maybe it's like a therapeutical process.
The episode that's going to come out this week there were very few photographs to go with it, and there was nothing, I didn't have any photos. So Chris and Margaret told me about this wonderful site called Google Images, and I had the most wonderful time finding images to fit in to the next stage of the story.
Yeah.
And I found that very therapeutic as well.
So do you think that, I mean, what's in store for you now,
Well,
Kathy?
I am staying. Absolutely no way I'm going anywhere else. This is my home. This is my flat is my... I have got so many friends here. The support I have received since Alistair died has been phenomenal. I mean, both in the real world and in the Facebook world.
Yeah.
I mean, I have now made friends with people all over the world through Facebook.
Yeah.
Just to backtrack a tad, I would like to make a comment for people who may have read the letter that Denise Phillips wrote to the Cyprus Today about Jan and Denise and Zara at Alistair's funeral. My daughter and I were discussing it afterwards, and just for those of you who don't know, Jan came up to the front to speak a few words, and I think you don't mind me saying you broke down.
Yes.
And then Denise and Zara leapt up like good girl guys, they're coming to the rescue.
Supposing you could
Coming to the
support me.
Zara said, okay, I will do my poem. I think she got 1 or 2 words out, and then she choked up. And Denise, bless her, she then turned around and said, you wouldn't believe that we're professional DJs, but none of us can speak.
Yeah.
And then you just all stood there. And Sasha and I found that the fact you couldn't speak was more emotional, more definitive of your love for Alistair than if you'd stood there and just spouted out, oh, what a lovely chap he was, blah, 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 blah.
I think in a way, Kathy, what really happened is, I mean, obviously the shock of losing Alistair was one thing. I mean, you were sharing, as I said before at the beginning of the interview, you were sharing the updates, going to and from hospital. He was at Near East, wasn't he, I think?
Yes, well, near it, and then he was in Lefkosha.
Then he was in Lefkosha State Hospital.
Yeah.
So we were following, his progress. And actually, to be honest, it was Sunday that he passed away, the 1st of November. I was actually outside with some colleagues, with some friends, having lunch. And Denise said to me, and I wasn't on Facebook then, by the way, are you on Facebook? And I said, no, I'm outside, I haven't got internet. Alice has passed away, and we were really, really shocked. Anyway, all sort of, went, fast after that, what happened. And then we came back to work, and Zeta was upset, and we were talking about what should we do. And, we all said, we want to go to the funeral. And then, you shared the fact that, and for us, well, for me, personally, it was the very first time I'd actually ever been to a humanist funeral of an English person here in North Cyprus. I mean, I've been to many funerals here, Turkish Cypriot funerals, family, friends, relatives. And I didn't know what to expect. And of course, the lovely Marion Stewart held it all very well. She did the ceremony. And there was your grandson playing the music. I mean, our DJ Zell, Romantic Girl, cried at John Lennon. Imagine. I mean, one of the songs that, that Alistair chose for his funeral. And I was actually asked previously, a day or two before the funeral, from Marion. She didn't know that we didn't speak with Marion that I was going to go. She actually said to me, would you like to write a few words that I can read out? And I said, I'm actually going. She goes, oh, even better. Do you mind if I call you up? I said, I don't mind. I've spoken in public before. I can say a few words. And you actually hadn't spoken then. Other people had spoken, and Sasha, your daughter, had spoken, which I thought she was very, very good. I thought, if it was me, I couldn't have gone through that. I think the Turkish culture is much more, we can't control that. We don't have, don't get me wrong, we don't have the stiff upper lip of the British. Anyway, so there's Sasha talking about her father, and then I was invited. Fine, got up there, and in front of me were you, Sasha, your son-in-law, your friends and other people there, and I could not say a word. For once in my life, speechless. I mean, not just the fact that I was crying. I mean, maybe you can imagine that somebody cries, and then, you say a few I'll be all right, I'll be all right, and you carry on. But I could not continue, and the words couldn't come out of my mouth. And then, as you say, of course, Denise and Zell tried to help me, but we all went pear-shaped.
Yes.
But I think what it is with the Cypriot community here, you guys, for me, you were friends as well as listeners.
Yeah.
But the fact that you were listeners first, and that bond between us.
Yes. Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't expect that overwhelming feeling coming over us, but it did. It affected us. And I have to say, I do make my apologies again, 2 or 3 months down the line, that, we weren't expecting to be that emotional, and that everyone else was so good, but we were actually, we wanted to say some more positive words. And I think that's the reason why Denise wanted to write as well in the paper, just so that what we were going to say there that day, we couldn't have said it. We didn't say, but we wanted to have it in print for you. But for us, it was an amazing day. Very uplifting, very moving. I think Alistair was sent off in the best way possible. He couldn't have had a better funeral, at all.
I don't like to use the word funeral, actually, which is why I insisted nobody wore black.
Yeah, and we didn't.
I wanted to call it an affirmation of his life, because it was a story about a wonderful man. And choosing the music was important. I mean, I had Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, because at the end, down by the grave, because Alistair had been a fan of Leonard Cohen's for years and loved Leonard Cohen. It took me a while to get into Leonard Cohen.
Not everyone's taste.
No, not everybody's. I used to say, oh God, listen to that dirge stuff again. But I actually got to quite like it.
Hallelujah is a very powerful tune.
Yeah. And my choice was Imagine, because again, to me, that song is evocative of all sorts of
it's
memories.
an amazing tune.
Yes. And Queen, I think we had Barcelona. And in fact, we had the long version. Because all I said to Sasha was what I wanted. She downloaded them on her whizzy phone, and Jill Moon very kindly lent us some speakers so that we could play them. And Alex was given the job of pressing the buttons
at
and
the right
doing
time.
whatever. But I don't think Marion realised how long that version of Barcelona was going to be, because she kept looking as if it was just about finished, and oh no, it's still going on.
Do you think, again, I mean, I'm asking you an obvious question, but I'm so amazed at how much your love for Cyprus has kept you here. And as I said, any time now since Alistair's passing, you could have gone back to the UK to be with your family, but you don't want to be. And I actually seem to think that in a way, you're enjoying, you've taken life even more seriously now. Or when I say more seriously, you're out and about, you're enjoying going to your favourite restaurants and bars.
Yes,
you're meeting up with friends.
Yes.
Has life changed for you since Alistair's passing in a positive way?
Alice and I, since we moved here in May 2006, were, to use a horrible American expression, 24/7. We were with each other all the time. He was not, I was delighted to say, he hated football. He couldn't imagine anything worse than going down to the local bar and watching football with a load of men. That to him would have been hell. He was not really a great one for any expat functions. We are members of the BRS, to which I'm extremely grateful, because the discount we got from the when he was in the Near East was extremely helpful.
Yeah.
Plug for BRS there. But we just didn't do the social expat type things. However, since Alistair's died, I can remember somebody, and I can't remember who it was now, at his wake that we held at the Happy Valley on the Thursday, saying to me, if somebody asks you to do something, go somewhere, don't say no, because if you say no, they won't ask you again. So I found myself saying yes to all these things that normally I would have said no to, and finding actually I was quite enjoying them, because I was very different sort of I was more of the extrovert. Alistair was very introvert. We were chalk and cheese.
That's why you got on so well.
That's why we got on so well. But I'm actually, I mean, like every Wednesday now, I go down to the coffee shop in Doancoy, where a group of local expats get together, and we meet about 6 o'clock, and we have a few drinks together. I usually just have the one, and then go home again. But it's a lovely get together, and they also have their Wednesday lunches, which again Alistair would never have gone to. I went to the Christmas one, extremely lucky because I won a bottle of champagne, which was very useful because I was able to have that on when I went for my Christmas with Susie Moore and her husband Hussein. But all these things I would never have done. I mean, Alistair and I were very, very, very insular, but happy to be insular. We were happy in each other's company.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. I mean, when you were married, excuse me, when you were together, you were happy to be, even your Facebook, it's Alistair and Kathy Martin, Ali and Kathy Martin.
Kathy, yeah. Although Alistair never used it. He couldn't understand Facebook. Couldn't understand anybody wanted to use Facebook at all.
But for you now, I suppose, in a way, you can now do the things that, you didn't maybe have the time to do before or weren't able to do before. But now you kind of... So this, for you now, life is a great opportunity. You're going to be happy sharing your series of, I suppose it's Alistair's words.
Lives, yes.
Life and Times of Alistair.
But then I have a plan. I have plans for... The 2 weeks after he died, I found it extremely cathartic, and I've discussed it with Chris and Margaret. I want to share that as well. I wrote the lead up from June when he started being ill through to the, right through to the funeral on the other side. As I was writing, it was flooding, but I found it really helped. It's much shorter than his life story, but it worked for me because I was able to get it down. And I've always typed. I can't, my handwriting is appalling. Nobody can ever read my handwriting. I type. And that's how I was typing. I typed up everything.
So, you've put your pen to paper now, as they say, following Alistair's footsteps. So where he's finished, maybe you'll be taking, a few leaves out of his book and,
Who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen? We have to watch the Cyprus scene
Watch
space.
Cyprus scene, yes.
Maybe now what you've gone through, I mean, with Alistair's illness and living here in North Cyprus and going through all the legal things, the necessary things. I know that you've had help with sorting out paperwork and something other now. You've come out stronger with probably even more stronger friendships as well. I know that you were very grateful to all the people who have supported you over the last few months.
Very, very grateful.
I'm sure now other people who might want advice from you might come and knock on your door and say, Kathy, how did you get through this with Alistair?
I would like to feel that when people read what I've written about Alistair and about the funeral, about everything, and that what I called on Facebook the form from hell, the British state system, pension, when he died, his pension stopped. I don't get my pension until November this year, which means I've got a gap of no money. There is a form that they send you to fill in. I started filling it in, and it was asking me questions about what jobs had he had, and what was he earning, and what was his pay. I don't know. Not the faint. I was ready to throw the whole thing away. Sona Kufi, who was actually here at the time, I was actually meeting him the day that I got the form, and I was telling him, and he said, "No, don't you dare." He said, "You fill that in. They know. They've got your NI number. They know what jobs he did." One of the questions they wanted to know was, had I ever been in hospital? Well, in 1981, which is the year that Diana married Prince Charles, I know I was in hospital because I can remember watching the wedding in the hospital. The hospital since has closed. They wanted to know the name of the hospital, the date, the ward I was in, the doctor. I had no idea. So I just wrote, no idea, against it.
But, it's a learning curve. I'm sure that you could now then maybe, if anyone else
I
has
would
to
be
go
able
through
to advise somebody on
you
exactly.
can now advise other people saying...
But I would like to say the positive side of that is that is now been resolved, and I'm now getting the money, which will come through every week until
And it will
my
help you
pension.
to survive and live your
Yes.
happy life here in
Yes,
North
yes,
Cyprus.
yes.
Hopefully, many, many more happy
Oh,
years
hopefully
here
many,
in
many
the
more years,
TRMC.
yes.
Kathy, I just want to say thank you very much for sharing your personal story and your memories.
Thank you
of
for
Alistair.
inviting me. When you asked me, I thought, me? Why me? I'm a non-entity.
You are not a non-entity. For me, you are a very dear friend of Bidax.
Thank you,
I want to say thank you for all your support over the years, you know, via your messages on Facebook, even telephone messages every now and then. Your comments are very inspiring. Even the letters that you've written before
Oh, we've written to
supporting Bidax
Cyprus today,
in Cyprus
yes.
today.
Yeah.
Most grateful. You are a dear friend
Thank you.
of not just Bidax, but of North Cyprus, a walking advert for the island. And I wish you many more happy years here,
Thank you, Jen.
living in Doğanköy. And if anything we can do to help you in the next years here, then we're always here. Your friend on your radio, Bidax. And I look forward to reading more about Alistair, learning more about him in Cyprus scene.
Yes.
And I'm sure that those who have read his ramblings are fans of Alistair anyway. But you'll continue, I'm sure, where he left off. But I want to wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you.
And a happy and healthy
And I
life.
had to bring him with me.
He's with us.
He's with me.
Always with us, Kathy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we've come to the end of our very interesting chat with Kathy Martin. And, the people out here, those who stay here, live here, enjoy life here, special people who recognise the beauty of the TRMC and who find the beauty in everything they see. This lovely lady has taken the time and trouble to come today to BRTK, and I hope you enjoyed her story. Don't forget, Cyberscene is now where she'll be writing and sharing Alistair's words. So if you are on the internet, go on to cyberscene.com. But for me, from John, your host for A Cup of Conversation, it's goodbye for this week. Until next time we meet again on BRT2 TV, take care and go well. Bye-bye.